Welcome back, dear listeners. I hope everyone is doing great and staying on the good side of things. If you want to experience the true, chilling feeling of fear, you are in the right place. Stay tuned to the Shadows Prevail, because you'll find all sorts of unsolved mysteries right here on our channel. So, without further ado, let's jump right into the story. Guys, back in 2005, a massively popular Hollywood movie dropped. It was called The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Now, Hollywood has made a ton of horror movies over the years, but there was something really specific and really disturbing about this one. If you looked closely at the movie poster, it had this chilling tagline, based on a true story. And it was. It was based on the terrifying real-life story of Anneliese Michel. This is easily one of the most famous documented exorcism cases in human history. Anneliese Michel was a girl born in West Germany back in 1952. When she was just 16 years old, she was at school one day when she suddenly passed out, just completely collapsed. Her friend said that when she fainted, she went into this super weird trance-like state for a minute or two. That evening, when she went back home and got into bed, she suddenly woke up in the middle of the night. She said it felt like there was this incredibly heavy weight crushing down on her body. And when she looked down at her bed, she realized she had actually wet herself in her sleep. But then, for the next few weeks, even months, nothing happened. That is, until a year later, when the exact same terrifying incident happened all over again. This time, Anneliese's parents felt like they had to step in and take her to a doctor. The Sun newspaper reported that when her parents took her in, neither the general doctor nor the neurologist could find a single thing wrong with her. Nothing. But fast forward almost another year to February 1970. Anneliese contracted tuberculosis, and she had to be admitted to the hospital. And this time, while she was lying in that hospital bed, Anneliese said she started seeing these bizarre, unnatural colors. And she started hearing things. Weird whispering voices. The doctors diagnosed her with temporal lobe epilepsy, which they said was causing her to have seizures. Now, normally, this isn't some super rare disease. Over 50 million people worldwide suffer from it. But Anneliese's case? It was completely different. A few days later, Anneliese started having these absolutely terrifying hallucinations. She started seeing horrifying things that nobody else in the room could see, hearing voices that nobody else could hear, and the voices in her head kept telling her, over and over again, that she was cursed. Because of this, she fell into a deep, heavy depression. But guys, that was just the beginning. Catholic Christians often kneel when they do a specific type of prayer, right? Well, the Telegraph newspaper reported that Anneliese started doing this 600 times a day. 600 times. It got to the point where she literally destroyed the ligaments in her knees. Then, one time, she hid under a table and barked like a dog for 2 straight days. Once, she ate a live spider. Another time, she chewed on a piece of coal. And one time, she literally bit the head off a dead bird. Her parents were terrified. They had absolutely no clue what was happening to their little girl. When they couldn't get any logical answers from the doctors, they went straight to a bishop, begging him to perform an exorcism on Anneliese. Now, an exorcism basically means pulling a demonic spirit out of someone's body through intense religious rituals. In places like India, they call it yad funk. But it was claimed that there wasn't just one demon hiding inside Anneliese's body. There were 6. German dictator Adolf Hitler, Roman Emperor Nero, Judas, the disciple who betrayed Jesus. 4th was Cain, Adam's son who murdered his brother Abel. 5th was Lucifer, the main devil in Christian theology. And the 6th was Valentin Fleischmann, a disgraced German Catholic priest from the 1500s who was kicked out of the church. As these exorcisms were being performed on Anneliese, it said that the demons inside her actually started speaking out loud. And the craziest part? The real audio clips from those actual exorcism sessions are still available online today. Now, Anneliese Michel's case is undeniably one of the most bizarre things recorded in human history. But here's the thing. It is not the only one. Get this. About 10 years ago, an American guy was found completely unconscious inside his hotel room. Just out cold. When paramedics rushed him to the hospital and he finally woke up, he suddenly started speaking fluent Swedish. I mean, perfect Swedish. When the hospital staff checked his ID and documents, they found out his name was Michael Boatwright. But when they asked him his name, he just looked at them, dead in the eyes, and said, "My name is Johan Eck." I mean, think about it. How does an American guy just wake up from passing out and suddenly start speaking a completely different language? And going back to Anneliese, how did she start making actual, guttural demonic sounds out of her own mouth? Did a literal demon possess her body? Let's take a step back for a second and try to break down these terrifying mysteries from a purely scientific perspective. In pop culture, people call it demonic possession. Basically, a ghost or an evil spirit taking over your physical body. But the real reason behind all of this? The psychological root? It's something called multiple personality disorder. You've probably heard of this disorder somewhere, right? If not, you've definitely seen movies about it. Films like Apartheid, Karthik Calling Karthik, Fight Club, or the absolute classic, Psycho. Just like the name implies, multiple personality disorder literally means one single person has multiple, completely distinct personalities living inside them. But how does the human brain even do that? Well, to really understand this, we actually have to stop using that old name. Because nowadays, the medical field calls this dissociative identity disorder. Now you know what identity means. It's who you are. But what does dissociation of identity actually mean? There's a famous poet named Nita Fosley who once wrote something really profound. He said, "Inside every person, there are 10 to 20 people, whoever you want to see. Look multiple times." That poem actually holds a terrifyingly deep psychological truth. Because, think about it. First, there's the person you actually are in reality. But second, there's the person you think you are. You see the difference? Someone might actually be a complete idiot in real life, but inside their head, they genuinely think they are a super genius. In psychology, there's an actual clinical term for this: the Dunning-Kruger effect. This happens when someone massively overestimates their own abilities, especially when they literally have zero knowledge or skill. Like the old proverb goes, empty vessels make the most noise. But being foolish or intelligent is just one side of the coin. Dissociation of identity can also happen when someone genuinely thinks they have a pure, kind heart, but in reality, they are incredibly toxic and selfish. Or it could be the exact opposite. Someone might be amazingly talented, but they constantly feel like they are worthless. So, number 1, the person you actually are. Number 2, the person you think you are. That right there is your self-image. And number 3 is the concept of the ideal self. That's the person you want to be. This varies from person to person and is heavily influenced by your social conditioning. Because for some people, their ideal self might be a loud, flashy internet personality like Elvis Yadov. But then you have a highly respected educator, like Dr. Vikas Divyakirti, who tells his son, "Look, the security guard in our apartment building protects us. He is older than you, so you must always respectfully greet him." So what would the ideal self be for that kid? Being humble and grounded. Now, if there's a massive gap between a person's number 2, who they think they are, and number 3, who they want to be, their confidence will absolutely tank. They'll suffer from extreme low self-esteem. But if a person's number 2 and number 3 identities align perfectly, their confidence will be through the roof, because this whole thing really just boils down to one single question. How much do you like and accept yourself? Are you like the character Geet from the movie Jab We Met, who proudly says, "I am my own favorite"? Or are you someone who absolutely hates looking in the mirror? Self-image, ideal self, and self-esteem. Psychologist Carl Rogers says that our self-concept is built out of these 3 parts, and these 3 parts depend on a lot of different things. What are our daily habits? What's our environment like? What things make us feel proud? What embarrasses us? What are our deepest regrets? What are our dark secrets? What are we afraid of? What are our wildest desires and fantasies? It's totally possible that someone looks incredibly happy on the outside, but deep down, inside, they feel super sad and completely isolated. Like the poet Kaifi Azmi wrote, "You are smiling so much. What sorrow are you hiding?" It's possible that someone looks super religious from the outside, but deep down, they don't believe in God at all. It's possible someone acts super respectful and humble to the world, but inside, they are boiling with rage and frustration toward their boss or a family member. Biologically, it could even happen that someone has the physical body of a man, but deep inside, they truly feel like a woman, or vice versa. So the point I'm trying to make here, guys, is that our identity and our mind is an incredibly complex thing. Sometimes, our different identities completely dissociate into separate, isolated personalities. Clinically, these separate personalities are called alters. A person could have 2 alters, 4, 5, even 20 altars. There's a very famous case of a woman named Kim Noble, who has over 100 different personalities. Each one has a different name, a different age, a different gender identity, a different temperament, completely different body language, and even completely separate memories locked inside her brain. Now, normally, even regular people show different personalities to some extent. Like, there are people whose behavior and body language are totally different when they're hanging out with their friends, compared to when they are sitting with their parents. The way you talk, your emotional tolerance, everything changes depending on who you're with. But in this disease this goes to an absolute extreme level. Not only does your body language and behavior change, but your actual name changes, your age changes. In some people's cases, entirely different memories start forming in their heads. It's almost like they're dividing their mind into completely isolated compartments. In these cases, there is always one main personality that is present for the majority of the time. This is called the host identity, or primary identity. Usually, this is the personality holding the name you were actually born with. But in some cases, an alter can actually hijack your brain and become your host identity. Just like in Kim Noble's case, one of her alters, Patricia, eventually became her primary host identity. Kim Noble has a 14-year-old daughter. When she acts as a mother and takes care of her kid, she doesn't see herself as Kim. She genuinely sees herself as Patricia. Besides Kim and Patricia, she has plenty of other identities too, like Judy, Julie, Abby, Dawn, Ken, Bonnie, and Haley. Back in 2017, the Hollywood blockbuster Split showcased exactly this terrifying phenomenon. When Kim and her daughter went on the Oprah Winfrey Show, they were actually filmed twice. Once when they were at home, Kim's personality was Patricia, but when they actually got on the set, her personality switched to a 15-year-old girl named Judy. Now, it's nothing to be absolutely terrified of, because honestly, the personality doesn't just switch suddenly with some dramatic Hollywood sound effect. In fact, most of the time if you didn't know about it, you wouldn't even notice it. But here is the crazy part. Whenever a personality switch happens, they have absolutely zero memory of what the other personality did. So in their daily lives, they often lose their keys somewhere, or they order a pizza delivery and have no idea they even ordered it. Sometimes they find their car mysteriously parked miles and miles away. One day, a deeply disturbing thing happened. A personality switch occurred while she was driving. Her 15-year-old Judy personality took over behind the wheel, and it resulted in a terrifying car crash. A person suffering from dissociative identity disorder doesn't even know they have it. All they realize is that they are suddenly losing huge blocks of their memory. They lose all sense of time. They have absolutely no idea where they were a few hours ago, when a different personality was in control. When Kim was finally diagnosed with DID, Patricia and the other alters flat out refused to believe it. They thought, "What kind of nonsense is this? This can't be happening to us." It literally took 6 years of intense therapy before they finally accepted what was happening. Once they did, the puzzle pieces finally clicked. They realized why they kept losing time, and why there were massive dark gaps in their memory. With the help of psychotherapy, Patricia slowly started accepting her condition. But what's the solution here? The solution is the exact opposite of dissociation, our integration. The goal is to build communication between the different alters, so they can merge back together into one single identity. At the time this article was written, their identity still hadn't fully integrated. They were still experiencing 3 to 4 switches every single day. But over time, they learned what their triggers were. For example, whenever food was served, Judy's personality would pop out. Whenever she went to take a shower, the spirit of water personality would completely take over her body. By understanding these triggers, they slowly started to manage their did system. But on the flip side, Anneliese Michel, whose story I told you at the beginning of the video, wasn't so fortunate. She was subjected to 67 exorcisms in just a 10-month time span. And then, she died. What was the actual reason behind her death? A lot of people claim the demons killed her, but the official autopsy report stated something far more tragic. She didn't die from a demon or some negative energy. She died from starvation and acute dehydration, literally, a severe lack of food and water. Her weight had dropped so drastically that she was down to just 32 kilograms. That's about 70 pounds. When the news of her terrifying death spread around the world, it became a massive national scandal. Law enforcement agencies immediately got involved. They found out that Anneliese had actually been under psychiatric care since she was 16. Her physician said she had been giving a positive response to her medication and therapy. They revealed that Anneliese actually suffered from 3 distinct mental illnesses. First, temporal lobe epilepsy, which I already mentioned earlier. Second, anorexia nervosa. This is a mental illness where people have a completely distorted perception of their own weight. Perfectly healthy people start believing they are gaining weight, getting fat. But in reality, their bodies are fine. Because of this terrifying fear, they keep eating less and less until they reach an abnormally low body weight. And her third illness? Hyper-religious personality disorder. A condition where a person's religious beliefs become so incredibly intense, so extreme, that they start reporting mystical experiences. They start having illusions and hallucinations about spirituality. These people often become completely obsessed with things they consider unholy or impure. Their thoughts constantly loop around the horrifying fear that they might have committed a sin or done something terribly wrong. The reason behind this? Her parents. They were overly religious to an absolute extreme degree. Anneliese's entire childhood was spent in a severely strict religious upbringing. This is exactly why Anneliese felt like demons were sitting inside her, and why she called those demons Hitler, Judas, or Lucifer. It's pretty obvious when you think about it. If a Hindu, a Muslim, or an atheist were in her shoes, suffering from the exact same problem, those specific names would have never popped into their heads. Anneliese only knew names like Lucifer, Judas, and Cain, because those were the names she was taught to fear during her childhood. A professor from Wurzburg University stated that all these things adding up caused Anneliese to face a very heavy psychic disturbance. The district attorney stated that if she had been given proper medical assistance at the right time, her death could have easily been prevented. This is exactly why charges were filed against her parents and the 2 Roman Catholic priests who performed those exorcisms. All 4 of them were convicted of negligent homicide. Now, a question might pop into your head right about now. A lot of us have irrational thoughts, internal conflicts, regrets, deep fears, repressed desires, and superstitions. But we don't all develop did. Why is that? What is the actual difference between the people who get this disease and the people who experience all those other things but never suffer from did? What is the actual root cause behind dissociative identity disorder? Well, when data from people suffering from DID across the US, Canada, and Europe was compiled, the results were absolutely heartbreaking. It showed that in approximately 90% of cases, the people suffering from this illness had faced some form of severe abuse during their childhood. This abuse could be physical, emotional, or sexual. It could have been repetitive, or it could have happened for just a very short period of time. But because of this abuse, a very serious psychological trauma is formed. A deep mental wound is left on the brain, and because of this severe trauma, your brain literally dissociates. It sounds a bit weird to hear, but it's the absolute truth. Dissociation is the body's ultimate coping mechanism. To somehow overcome the unbearable pain and trauma in your mind, your brain actually splits into different personalities just to survive. Obviously, this isn't a safe or healthy way to cope. It is a severe mental illness. Because of this, people fall into severe stress, intense anxiety, and deep depression. It leads people to fall prey to drug and alcohol addiction. And in a lot of cases, they become violent, either towards themselves or towards others. Whatever traumatic event happened to a person in their childhood, it usually gets pushed deep into their unconscious mind. And in most cases, they don't even remember what actually happened to them. Now, hearing about the treatment method might sound a bit strange, but in psychotherapy, when they treat this, the therapist actively tries to remind you of that traumatic event. Because if you want to reintegrate those scattered identities back together and rebuild one single identity, accepting and forgiving that terrifying past event is absolutely crucial. The solution is literally hidden in remembering that past and accepting it. Now, dissociation is something that, in severe cases, turns into full-blown DID. But mild cases of this, they are seen in a lot of regular people, just like I mentioned earlier. Chances are, every second person watching this video has definitely experienced a dissociative episode at least once in their entire life. Some studies say that number is around 50%. That is a massive number. It means almost half the world's population has experienced this at some point. But don't get confused. This isn't a black and white thing where you either have it or you don't. It is a spectrum. Just like there's a spectrum between democracy and dictatorship, there's a spectrum for dissociation too. There can be a lot of moderate and mild cases, but DID only develops in the absolute extreme cases. A prime example of a mild case would be dissociative amnesia. You've probably heard this dialogue in a movie before. I don't remember anything that happened after that. Often, when people suffer through a traumatic episode, their brain completely dissociates that episode from time itself. They literally forget a lot of details about the event. This specific type of dissociation is called dissociative amnesia. Besides that, there can be dissociative fugue. I gave you an example of this earlier in the story. Michael Boatwright, the American guy who passed out and suddenly woke up speaking Swedish. Now, do you know how that actually happened? The reason was incredibly simple. He had spent a large chunk of his life living in Sweden. Swedish public records showed that Boatwright lived in Sweden on and off between 1981 and 2003. When several Swedish locals were questioned, they said they knew an American guy who had a huge interest in medieval history. There were even photos found of him from when he visited Sweden as a kid. But after spending all those years in Sweden, he moved to Japan, where he got married and became a father. After that, he moved to China to teach English. And finally, he moved to California. Doctors stated that he was suffering from a dissociative fugue state, which is where people become incredibly confused about their past events. The trigger here was also some underlying trauma. Boatwright had a son and 2 ex-wives, but when they asked him about them, he had absolutely zero memory of any of them. The band Linkin Park has a legendary song called Numb. There's a lyric in that song that goes, "I've become so numb, I can't feel you there." There are some people who frequently get this terrifying feeling that they are completely detached from their own actions, their thoughts, and their feelings. They view themselves almost like an outsider looking in. This type of dissociation is called depersonalization. Very similar to this is another type of dissociation called derealization. This is where people get this surreal feeling that the world around them and the people in it are completely unreal. Everything feels like a dream. Time either moves painfully slow, or it starts moving incredibly fast. All of these are very serious mental health issues, but unfortunately, most movies either show them in a super terrifying way or in a wildly insensitive way. Like in the Bollywood movie Bhool Bhulaiyaa, Rajpal Yadav plays a character named Kota Pandit. He's suffering from a mental illness, and his only purpose in the film is to serve as comic relief. At the end of the movie, a so-called psychiatrist cures him by literally slapping him across the face. Even in the main storyline with Vidya Balan's character, the psychiatrist uses some incredibly bizarre methods for treatment. Methods that no real-life therapist would ever approve of. On the flip side, some movies portray dead patients in a hyper-violent way, like a Parakeet, or Alfred Hitchcock's legendary film Psycho. They are shown as completely dangerous, terrifying monsters. This illness is highly sensationalized, strictly for entertainment purposes. Dr. Simone Reinders from King's College London says that in a society where there's already a massive stigma around mental illnesses, movies like this that portray dead patients as violent and dangerous people only make the problem worse. In real life, the vast majority of dead patients are actually not violent at all. A 2017 research study came to that exact same conclusion. One movie where a dead patient was actually shown in a very sensitive and accurate way was Karthik Calling Karthik. If you guys remember that film starring Farhan Akhtar and Deepika Padukone. Besides that, there's a Hari web series called Upri Parai, which beautifully portrays the actual rules of therapy. It shows how a psychotherapist first creates an environment of safety, confidentiality, and trust around the patient. It also features real-life clinical techniques like guided imagery and the Bandler handshake, which are actually used in hypnotherapy. After watching this video, I really hope you guys have a much better understanding of this illness. You should realize that we really shouldn't create a stigma around mental illness. Look, if someone has a heart problem, they go to a cardiologist. If someone has a mental issue, they should go to a therapist. It shouldn't be an ego thing. In real life, if a person is suffering from extreme stress, anxiety, depression, or irritability, it's highly possible that the root cause is one of these illnesses. That's exactly why consulting a psychotherapist is always a smart idea. And if you still think that things like ghosts, spirits, demons, or witches actually exist in real life, then it's time to open your eyes. We are living in the year 2026 now, but whether you choose to believe it or not is entirely up to you. Just like evil spirits and witches exist in this world, they definitely have a presence. And even the Holy Bible or other religious texts mention them. Who really knows what's hiding in the dark? The link to download the Power of Universe book is in the description below, or you can just scan this QR code. And if you're still not convinced by what I've said, you can go check out this video right here, where I talked all about ghosts. Do ghosts actually exist? What is the real truth behind them? Click here to find out. Guys, how did you like the story? Let us know by liking, commenting, and sharing. And what kind of terrifying stories are you guys loving right now? Don't forget to drop a comment below. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button, click the bell icon, and try to stick around. Until next time, stay safe and take care. Goodbye.